You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
Welcome to episode 69 of A Life in Ruins podcast, where we investigate the careers of those living a life in ruins. I'm your host, Carlton Gover, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Connor Johnen and David Howe. We are continuing our series on early complex civilizations, and to honor the 69th episode of this podcast, we figured we'd look at Andean archaeological cultures. If you have no clue why, well, buckle up, because Moche pottery depicts more than just the birds and the bees in their art. I love how Connor's muted and he doesn't know it.
Yo, your stutter in the middle of that thing when your Geonosian came out, dude. It was really funny.
Just a heads up for our audience today that some of the material cultures that we will discuss are sexual in nature. It's a legitimate topic of research in Andean archaeology and pertinent to our investigation of early complex civilization studies.
We cannot guarantee, however, that we will not giggle like preteens at a slumber party when discussing Moche sex pottery. Wei Zhongjin.
Wei Zhongjin. Excellent. So just background for all of us. I'm pretty sure the only Andean archaeologists that I know are Dr. Tui and Alex Garcia Putnam. Hashtag free him Homeland Security.
I know two others that I've met through work, but I do remember that Garcia got stopped at the border.
Yeah,
Canadian border, right?
There's also a CSU prof, Mary Van Buren, who did my Andean archaeology class, and she killed it. But I don't remember anything because it's just the way I am.
There's Dr. Randy Haas as well.
Ooh.
Yeah, piercing blue eyes. And,
they are piercing, aren't they?
Yeah, I remember first meeting him, and he was like, "So, what's your thesis about?" And I was like, "Are you like a White Walker? Or like, what's up?" But I mean, aesthetically, like it's a great face, great eyes. You know, just digging a hole here. So
he also gave one of the best SAA talks I've ever seen.
The one in DC.
Kid. Yeah, he just was like, I was on a plane. And then I basically figured out all the archaeology of this one site by clicking on buttons. It's like, Jesus.
He was looking at his brother was showing him how they computer generate trees in architectural drawings. Mm-hmm. And on the course of at Denver airport to getting to DC, he completely changed the talk. Didn't tell anyone in his session and started off by looking at Todd and being like, "You remember how you told me to follow my dreams, Todd? Well, I'm following my dreams."
Wow.
It just completely did a talk that he didn't even submit an abstract for an essay. So he completely was just like, so I solved this problem. Course of eating an Auntie Anne's pretzel in Concourse B at Denver International Airport.
That was Randy?
Yeah, dude, it was nuts.
At the Canyon Creek project I worked on with him and Eric and Spencer and Crabe, or Spencer's now the state archaeologist. I got to remember these people don't know who we're talking about. He's a state archaeologist. We've had Eric on before. Anyway.
We've had all three of them on before, except Randy. Anyway, we're up in this cave in the Bighorns, literally in Far Cry Primal Land. It was awesome. I was trying to take pictures of the cave with the iPad that Eric gave me. He was like, "Here, you suck at everything, so just take pictures." And I was like, "Okay." So I took pictures, and then Randy, I was like, "Hey, do you need me to take with measurements here, what do you call it, a scale in here so you can map out the cave?" He's like, "No, I got it." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "No, I mapped it out already. We're good." And he had just got he pulled no papers out. And I was like, "Oh." So he put the little the datum in and just eyeballed the cave, I guess. And I just took his word for it because the dude is like a computer.
He's a super genius. We'll have him on eventually. I think he published that paper that was talking about early women in South America and kind of dispelling that myth about man the hunter and the importance of that.
Wait, Randy was that guy?
Yeah.
He was part of that study, yeah.
Yeah.
He did not draw the painting.
Well, yeah. I just remember how concerned people got over that notion that a woman was able to hunt in prehistory.
Here's the thing, though. People on TikTok kept sending me that link, and they're like, "See, women hunted too." And I was like, one, never said they didn't, and then two,
Also, like, this isn't the first time that's ever been known. Like, it's just straight up known that women also hunted because they are molecularly half of our species. So, like, at some point they had to have thrown a dart into a deer here or there. Like,
but I think the importance is that she was like buried as grave goods. Yeah, celebrated kind of thing. But yeah, so I think Carlton said that we're going to do Andean, but I think we're going to hit more than Andean stuff. Are we just doing the Andean stuff?
A lot of it just so happens that a lot of the early complex civilizations that appear in South America begin in Peru and Ecuador along the coastal regions in between the Andes and the coast. So, yeah. So we're kind of actually sitting close to, at this point, Peru, Ecuador, and Bolivia.
That's got to be a little bit of a observer bias because you can't go into the middle of the Amazon and find anything and or live in the middle of the Amazon.
Right.
I'd agree with that. Yeah, I think that's a pretty excellent point that there is sampling bias, like especially like if you guys know anything about that area of the world, the Atacama Desert, which I know is more south, but that area on the west coast of South America is extraordinarily dry, which is conducive to preserving things.
Be where chinchillas come from. Over in that area, arid, like they're rolling their pumice to clean themselves.
It's a pretty chill place. Chinchilla.
What's a chinchilla?
You know what a chinchilla is. The species name
it's right next
is
to the
chinchilla. Does that ring a bell? They're like the little Pikachu looking things. They're fluffy and like amazingly cute. I had 2 of them, Machu Picchu and Sierra. They were dope. They shit everywhere, but what can you do?
Machu Picchu for a name?
Yeah, dude. I named her Machu Picchu, and I had no regrets.
Okay, I see. They're all right.
Yeah, man. They're rats. They're like related to rats.
Yeah, they definitely look like rodents. So the first civilization that appears is in Peru.
Can we establish something? Why in between the mountains and the coast? Like, what's so fruitful about that?
That is a great question.
It's just it's a way to, I think, use multiple environments. So you don't want to sit exactly on the coast and live there. I think in a lot of these societies, at least like the early stuff, you see folks going down to rivers, harvesting rivers and oceans and harvesting stuff, and then living up in higher altitudes and transversing. No, like just moving across. Yeah, traversing different environments to be able to take advantage of all that stuff.
Yeah, so the highlands basically empty out into the west coast, or they go into Brazil. So that area is extremely dry. However, it's kind of like a Tigris and Euphrates thing in Mesoamerica, or Mesopotamia, sorry. So they're settling along these drainage systems, accessing the coast for water resources, but the highlands are right there, so they're able to hit different trophic zones. So just have access to different food sources year round in different seasons.
That makes sense. It's interesting, because like if you look at the eastern United States, like the biggest metropolis of that is in between the Appalachians and the coast. And then in California, like most of what you think of as California is in between the mountains and the coast. So it's like seems to be a very appealing area to humans to settle. And I guess Denver is up against the mountains too, but there's no coast.
Well, you see that in the Pacific Northwest too. I mean, folks live in the interior, but use live in the interior and use the coast to. It's just the most efficient way. You don't want to live directly on the coast all the time. Be miserable. Be living on like Long Island where you hang out with a bunch of people.
Yeah, and like in particular to South American civs, there's the Maritime Foundations hypothesis proposed by Michael Mosley, which is basically what we've talked about, in which he argued that unique maritime resource, the Pacific coast, provided sufficient calories to support rapidly growing sedentary populations in like large communities. So that's where a lot of that comes from. But it's been heavily criticized, especially because people really believe, like, as Connor brought up a good point, like Northwest Coast, ancestral Tlingit, Haida populations, they heavily utilized Pacific Coast resources, but their communities never grew as large as some of these states that we see down in the highlands, which, like, for example, Norte Chico, also called, not Chavin, Chavin's a little bit later. Corral. That's around like 3700 to 1800 BCE. And that was the largest, or like the largest populator center of all the Americas during that time.
That's what it's supposed to be like one of the oldest civs that we would call, or oldest civilizations that we actually see in the Americas. Like you said, like Carlton said, there's at least 30 major population centers. This is right on the north central coast of Peru. It's kind of the first really complex civ that you're gonna see in South America and in the Americas as a whole.
I mean, it was contemporaneous with Uruk, so I mean, like, this is not like some late game. Like, South America has what arguably one of like the second oldest early state civilizations there is. Like, I think Uruk and like starts just a little bit beforehand or right about the same time. So really you're looking at like 3700 BCE. So this is comparable to what's going on in the Middle East. And there's not much known about it. Has a lot of pyramid complexes. So six earthen mound complexes. It's about 81 hectares, which is equivalent of 200 acres, 14 miles from the Pacific.
Well, these are like terraced. So they're pyramids they're just not squares on the ground. They're multiple terraces that are built up, and at least in some of these areas.
Yeah. The tallest one is about 60 feet high, and the base of it is 450 by 500 feet. And so these 6 pyramid mounds create not a platform inside,
what plaza
is that? Plaza, yeah. And they were done in like 1 or 2 phases. And in order to do this, like, they don't have clay in that area. So they are using a lot of plaster, cobbles, and dirt. So it's a mix. But they don't have maize or potatoes, which is like classic what we think of. But they grew a hell of a lot of cotton. You can't eat it, but, that's the same area that we find the earliest Andean textiles around 2500 BC.
Andean? Is that what we're saying?
Andean.
Yeah, and they also definitely are consuming squash, beans, guava as well.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Gourds and squash are pretty ubiquitous in the Americas all over.
Yeah, and definitely utilizing marine resources, clams, mussels, etc.
And honestly, the next biggest city doesn't happen until Teotihuacan, like a millennium later in the Americas. Like, and that's what's crazy about this is like we have a lot of structural and material evidence, but we have no idea really what happened because it kind of just went away. It was just abandoned around 2000 and 1500 BCE.
Well, I think something we'll probably discuss throughout this series is why you don't really see why this occurs so early in like the Andes, or we'll like speculate and talk about it, but it doesn't really occur till much later in Mexico and North America as well. Mm-hmm. So it's really interesting that these Peruvian valleys have these series of civilizations that are slightly different, but are also huge and die out, and it's just a really interesting area to study.
Before like the Olmec and the Toltec and stuff.
Yes, so Olmec and Toltec are a bit later in Central America, but like some of the textiles that we recovered from this area, they have this like double-headed snake motif that persists for like 3,000 years along multiple different early states. And like from the last episode, this is what we would highly consider a primary state. So these people developed this system of organization on their own. And what we see later is kind of what we would easily consider secondary states, where the influence of Norte Chico or Corral is people are adopting like, hey, I want to be like the guy from Corral who doesn't have to do anything, and women just get delivered to him, and I want that, so I'm going to do that here.
Okay. It is very confusing that Norte Chico is in South America when our Chico is in North America. I just want to throw that out there because I was really confused.
That's Norte Chico. It's double north.
I guess if I was confused, I was assuming some of you guys would be confused. So I just wanted to state that. Okay, and then the Norte Chico I'm looking at is 3700 BCE. So in years before the present, that's like 5,000 years before the present?
Yeah.
So like in North America, we're at like the Archaic period. So we have folks that are kind of roaming around, maybe hunkering down in some locations.
Poverty Point.
Yeah. They have some. Is that the one in Canada? Poverty Point.
Poverty Point is in Louisiana.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
There's that Canadian house place where they all hang out in the archaic as well. I can't remember what it's called.
Really? I didn't know.
Because we're an archaeology podcast, we will not look it up, and we'll move on. Yeah, I don't remember either. But yeah, so these folks are making these complex ceramics, all this stuff, and you really miss this in North America at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, they're making step pyramids out of stone just like they are in Mesopotamia, right? That's pretty dope, to be honest. It just makes Alien versus Predator seem all the more realistic.
It's like early civilizations figure out if you just stack some stones up, not straight up in the air, just at a wide base and just keep going up from there. They stay up.
And you slowly make them smaller so you can climb up them.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just really fascinating.
Yeah, it's got to be aliens.
Yeah. The only explanation is that they were talked to by Paul.
And you're talking about the three-eyed monkey from Nickelodeon, right?
That is also a good reference to Paul. Hi, I'm Paul. Yeah, it's Paul's the movie with Seth Rogen where he's like the alien that crashed in Roswell.
That was a really good movie. I really
it's a great movie.
Yeah. Is that with the two British dudes?
Yeah, Simon Pegg and Nick Frost.
Yeah.
Hot Fuzz, Shaun of the Dead. Hot Fuzz is one of my all-time favorite movies ever.
Speaking of Hot Fuzz, those chinchillas are baking in the desert. So let's go to the next segment. Bienvenidos. We are back with episode
69.
There we go. I was going to say it's the same thing the way, but I was like, wait, is this bad to introduce it in Spanish? Like, is that insulting? But no, it's also good because we're talking about South America, but they didn't speak Spanish in, this land. So I am on it. All right.
I'm just waiting for the last week's episode to release when we say Bob Kelly's on notice and just all the fan mail that we'll get from that one. But until then, we have another week.
And on that note, check out episode 68 before you listen to this one. We talk about complex civ and get ourselves canceled in the same moment.
We do.
So eventually Norte Chico dies out. I'm not sure we have good evidence why.
It's abandoned.
Just kind of it did its thing.
People vote with their feet.
Yeah, yep. And then you start to see in 1500 BCE Chavin, I think, appear, which is a sort of different culture and is pretty complex and there's been a lot of research into this area, and the type site for it is Chavin de Huantar, I think.
Whoa.
Yeah. So this is from about 1500 BCE to 500 BCE to 500 BCE, before Common Era. And Chavin is interesting because when it was initially excavated in the 70s, this archaeologist by the name of Julio Teo, and he noticed a lot of the motifs found at Chavin de Huantar on the monumental architecture. So we're looking at the masonry of temples, pyramids, these huge monumental complexes associated with early civilization. You find these same motifs and artistic styles across Andean civilizations after Chavin de Huantar and the surrounding region. And he came up with this idea that Chavin is like this mother culture to the surrounding areas. So it is a primary area of influence, was what he hypothesized, similar to like Greece. Could it be argued like Greece was kind of a mother culture to Rome?
Yeah, for sure. Like, because they colonized the Mediterranean before anybody. Well, I guess the Phoenicians did, but yeah, I would say like Hellenism was like the core of like the Mediterranean.
And this is still in the Andes, but we're a little bit further south of Norte Chico. And so this is really the first socially stratified society in central Peru or in the central Andes, sorry. And we know that socially stratified, meaning that you have elites and plebes because of like privileged elite burials and more elaborate dwellings. So we can see like you could today, right? Like if you go to Trump's apartment in New York, it's covered in gold and luxury
and Russians
and Russians
and urine.
Putin's there. They have and then if you go to like my apartment, you can tell it's completely different. And so we see that, especially this is a huge characteristic of complex civ, is if you excavate an entire city, you will see some people have more and a lot more people have less.
Someone's always got to sit in the way of the smoke of the campfire. That's what my grandpa always said. He did not say that. But if I'm a grandfather, I will say that.
I don't imagine your grandfather being Southern, because both of your parents, aren't they from New York?
Never met my mom's dad. But he was in Korea. He was stationed in Germany in Korea. And then my dad's dad. Yeah. He was like in Dusseldorf while the Korean War was going on. And then my dad's dad was a dairy farmer who then became a car salesman and then grifted. I think it's like
but they're both from like New York, right?
Yeah, like different parts, but
yeah. So I would imagine your grandfather having a Southern drawl.
Right. And the statement I made was also made up. So like it just none of this was relevant.
So Carlton had mentioned that there is a presence of elites. There is some sort of hierarchy that occurs. And this also part of Chavin culture is we see the presence of some sort of shaman or religion, kind of this something that kind of connects some person that connects the elite to elite to the gods. And so you see offering of deposits and some other pictographs that depict shamans performing these ceremonies to ultimately ratify the elite as these elite and to keep them in power, which is something I don't think you really see at Norte Chico or anything like that, and which is it's a really interesting kind of topic to go on.
Yeah, and its placement is on like a very important like river crossroads. So they're accessing both the coast, because these are the central Peruvian highlands. So they have these river systems that not only A, go into the Amazon, but B, also go into the west coast of South America. And there's like jaguar bones found here. There's a lot of trade goods, a lot of them that show some pretty distinct interactions between different parts of South America. And like as Connor was saying, there's planned ceremonial complexes with lowered plazas, flanking platforms, and like large temple complexes that have all this iconography. I think it used to be painted, right? Like a lot of these places in general, when we talk about early Civ, they're painted, but they show like these people were like Spartans almost, because a lot of their imagery on these ceremonial complexes are these really elaborate warriors and priests and rulers, and a lot of severed heads. No getting around that one.
Well, what can you do? Like you got to have something like that.
It is what it is.
It's what it is. These really early civilizations that we were talking about last segment and this segment, these people are using like squash and corn and whatnot and potatoes. No corn, I guess.
So here, there's definitely maize present.
Okay.
The last one, there's no evidence of potatoes or maize. But here we do see maize, squash, I think potatoes.
What was their, in the one without corn and potatoes, like what was their food?
A lot of shells. They're right on the coast.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So you see a lot of mussels and like marine
Pacific
resources.
Northwest, kind of.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Georgia coast.
But there's a lot of ritual activity that goes on here at Chavin in particular.
If you eat enough corn and you eat enough potatoes, you will have
type 2 diabetes.
Some kind of religious experience. It's the 4th of July is just corn and potatoes for us, so it makes sense.
Add some whiskey and you have the Irish.
Yep.
No Irish mean to apply.
Oh my God.
I'm trying to think. There's this whole section here of this article that I'm reading that talks about conch trumpets, like Lord of the Flies or something.
Like a shell.
Yeah,
that's pretty sick.
So it's one of them I'm looking at, which is an artifact at the Brooklyn Museum, actually has a person who's like supposed to be like high rank, with facial tattoos, just like me, in the A Life in Ruins art, and going to be here soon. And he's playing a shell trumpet.
And there's like a lot of chimeras on their art too, like a lot of different Like they just mixed and matched animals, which leads like Chavin archaeologists to believe that there's like two kinds of deities: a smiling god, which is depicted with a human body, a feline face, hands and feet, and the staff god, who's a standing male with downturned, snarling mouth and serpent headdress. And is the staff god because he grasps 2 staffs, each adorned with feline heads and jaguar mouths.
You know, that is a god I'd pray to.
That's a god that's serious, I guess.
When I was reading about Polynesia, they said that there's like random scattered Birdman iconography throughout Polynesia, especially on Easter Island. And that's like another evidence of contact with the Americas, because Birdman iconography is like pretty big over here.
Yeah.
And like I normally don't try to draw those connections, because then you can be like, well, I mean, there's pyramids in Indonesia and there's pyramids in Mexico. They were trading on stuff. But like in that sense, it like does, especially Easter Island would make a lot of sense. And like, yeah, that's cool. I think there's Birdman iconography down south too.
It also shows connection to the 21st century when they're talking about bird person. Or
Doctor.
What was that one show that was on Adult Swim where
Morty.
the dude with the wings was an attorney? Was it like Birdman, attorney at law or something? You know what I'm talking about?
Charlie Kelly is Bird Law. That's like from Sunny.
I was thinking Rick and Morty. What do they call the
Bird person?
Bird person.
Yeah.
They made Robo Bird Person too. I don't know if you guys have seen the newest season.
Dude, the one where like Morty keeps trying to go get the wine from like that area, and like that is expert writing, dude. I was like blown away with the story of that. It was so good.
What was the guy's name who was in charge of Atlantis? Neptune.
Oh, and like reality or like
No. In that episode.
Oh, that's it's not Seaman. It's like Ocean Man, something. I don't know. It's just like it's Rick and Morty. Yeah, he saves the day.
So, anything else we want to talk about on Chavin, or do you want to move on to
Moche 6 pots?
Oh, not quite there yet.
Not yet there. Not there.
We're doing lines.
I mean, the big part of his like Chavin ideology is so flamboyant and all over the place that you see it persisted in other Indian cultures that exist after it. So once again, this area is Chavin depopulated. People just kind of left, but it has a legacy in Indian civilization, and we see it as a whole deal.
I wish I could be there to watch them just all leave, like one day. Or it's probably over like a month or maybe a year. They're just like, oh, Kevin left. Wonder where Kevin went.
Well, I think it's just like, it's gradual, right? As you say, like people just gradually leave. I mean, it's collapse or depopulation is a slow process.
Yeah, diffusion into the next area.
I think we're watching the decline of the United States right now. We've had like a good 2 decades of just watching it happen in real time.
We're in the Nero part. Or like,
we absolutely are in the Nero part.
Yeah. He's banging horses and stuff. Like, I mean, we're just shy of that.
Is that what Joe Biden's doing with all his free time?
I was thinking of Trump with Stormy Daniels, but that's just me.
I mean, what can you do? The guy's a Roman emperor. He embraced that. He just did his thing, but he didn't drink though.
Yeah,
but he had a button installed in the White House for Diet Cokes that if you pressed it, people would just show up with a Diet Coke.
Oh, and he wanted to have his ceremony, He wanted to have his Roman Colosseum.
His military parade. Yeah, honestly,
who eats Big Macs
president,
without the bun?
He eats big. Oh my God!
Well, is he a keto Guido?
Did he cut the middle bun too?
Yes, he orders 2 Big Macs and just eats the patty, the cheese, whatever you can call that as lettuce, and the Thousand Island dressing.
What?
With a fork and a knife.
A bizarre man. Well, yeah, he must be keto, dude. Just cut out of the bread. Keto Guido. Speaking of keto Guidos, let's do some lines. Nazca lines.
Nazca. So we're going to bum out a lot of our ancient aliens friends here so moving on to Nazca, which is along the south coast, smaller drainages.
So we actually get into the Common Era now, which is so nice because, before Common Era is just like this weird time before things were common.
Yeah.
So the Nazca exists at like 100 to 800 of the Common Era, which is like 1200. No, 1900 to 1200 years ago, essentially.
Yeah, it's like a little before the Crusades.
Yeah.
Like 200, 300 years before it.
Yep. along the Dark Ages. But yeah, no. So this is coming in the southern part of South America. There are a couple civilizations that we kind of glossed over, but Nazca is interesting specifically because of the large geographical imagery that we all associate it with. But it also has like the Nazca state, which is centered on the Ica and Nazca drainages. It has outliers from the Chincha to Acari valleys. The earliest date's about 100 AD, as Connor said. Yeah, they terraced the hell out of the hillside. So if you think of Civilization 6, if you play as when you play as Peru, you get the terraced farming?
Yeah. Wait, are you Juana Capac, or are you who's the guy in Civ 6? Civ 5?
I don't know. I've never played him. The last game that we played, remember, I got iced out by him.
Right. Is that the one where I was Rome?
Is that where we almost lost our friendship?
We did almost lose our friendship over that video
game.
Do
not let David play as an aggressive expansionist, because I will expand aggressively.
And then lie about it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like,
lie about it the entire time and just like think that we're stupid.
Yeah, like, I'm going to text Carlton and maybe he'll go to war with Connor at the same
I'll
point.
text Connor and be like, here, declare war on Carlton with me. And then Carlton will be like, hey, Connor, David just texted me, Connor. And I'm like, oh, okay, no.
This all makes sense because you mentioned this in the last episode that you are this kind of kingpin in high school.
Rattle rouse.
In high school and from now on. Okay, so back to the Nazca.
I still have those memes.
That's how nerdy we are. We made our own memes for this Civ game we played for the three of us. Man, were they funny.
I'm still pissed about those embargoes, but my economy still made it through.
That was a different game.
Man, I just forgot to vote about it. No, man, I just forgot. What do you mean I just forgot? Like, God.
Weren't you Queen Victoria or something? You were the British too, which you needed
Oh, yeah, I did genuinely forget. And I just... No.
Because Connor told me about your little text message, and he showed me where you're like, yeah, I'm not voting to end his embargo.
I think that was the second time, though. Or was it the first time I forgot? Okay. Uh-huh. I did do it purposely on one time.
There was no forgetting in there. Get out of here.
But I do remember feeling terrible because you were like embargoed the whole game, and all I had to do was click no on something, and I was like, what is this? Hit yes. And then just like ruined your game for hours. Okay.
All right. I think we should just say, because Carlton was just on the Dirt podcast, go to the Dirt podcast, and they have a Nazca Lines podcast where they talk about this.
Dirt McGirt.
And it's called Nazca Outside the Lines is the episode title.
Yeah, and it's really cool. They talk about some of their irrigation and some kind of these pools that they created, and eventually talk about the textiles and whatnot. But I think we're gonna
move on to pots.
Yeah, we're gonna move on to penises because that's who we are as a podcast. So we will catch you in the third segment of episode 69.
Bienvenido de nuevo al episodio 69. Y estamos hablando de Moche sex pots. ¿Qué pasa?
So yeah, the Moche, before we get into sex pots real quick, because more than just sex pots, they are a rather complex civilization. And I think it's around, so they started around 500 AD.
So they're, just to put this in context, they're contemporaneous with the Nazca folks, just in a different area.
Yes. And they rule over a string of river valleys along the north coast. And they have a lot of iconography that's more than just the phallic stuff. Really elaborate elite burials, some really impressive metallurgy, some golden ear ornaments worn by the Lord of Sipan. Has like inlaid turquoise. It's just crazy, but as we all know, can you imagine being one of the archaeologists? You're excavating one of these assemblages, and you see like the top of a pot, and it's like clearly a human figurine, and you excavate further and further. You get to the belly button, and you're like, wow, look at this vessel. And then a little bit further, and then whammo. It's like that. I I don't know how to describe this stuff because like it's just
it's graphic. Is what I was. It's not even erotic. It's just like it insists upon itself. I can't really describe it in any other way.
It's like,
all right, audience, Google Moche sex pot. It's safe for work because it's art, but like
it's not safe for work.
I mean,
yeah, you might just have to type in Moche ceramics. You don't want to explain that one to your boss.
Yeah, go ceramics first.
Because it's like if Adam and Eve had a ceramic line.
There's like an element of like, it's not foreplay, but there's like an element of.
There's a lot of hand stuff going on.
And a lot of mouth stuff.
A lot of mouth stuff.
There's a lot of orifice stuff. Anything.
I see a threesome here.
Yeah.
And this one has a dog. This guy is really enjoying it.
Go check out Ethnocytology. Next post about bestiality.
I mean, I should do a post on that. I mean, it's a thing. It's anthropological.
A dude in Durango got arrested recently for having sex with a horse, but...
Really?
Yep.
Did you know necrophilia is a misdemeanor?
Just a misdemeanor, huh?
It's not a felony. I looked it up in Wyoming. It is a misdemeanor. I forget what made me look that up. It wasn't because I was trying to do that. It was just like, I wonder what like weird laws are like, or what like weird things like that are not considered crimes, but that is a crime. Oh, right. I remember. Because I was like, if you make out with somebody, you're technically digesting their saliva. So is that cannibalism? And then it went down a hole. It was with me and Brooke. You know, any amount of things could have been talked about.
Dude, but there's pots where, or I don't even know what to just like. It looks like a tea kettle, but the spout is a human penis.
It is. There's also one, if you can, all right, walk with me here, guys. If you can imagine like a gravy boat, like a gravy boat in which you put, you know, on the Thanksgiving table, there is a pot of, I'm assuming a woman, and the spout of the gravy boat is her vagina. And that is the only apt way to describe that. And it is, it is graphic.
Dude, there's one with a guy is making out with a panther.
Where's that one?
Same deal. Oh my God. It's from, you know, it's a post from Sapiens. And it says Moche sex pot, pornography, or something else. I wonder what they have to say about it. Sapiens is legit. Oh my God.
Interesting. There's a lot of like skeletal.
My boss wrote this.
Really?
Yes, Steve Nash.
Yo, tell Steve Nash.
I would have to ask him about working about this tomorrow.
Is tickled.
Oh my God. An anthropologically informed analysis suggests that the pots are not erotica.
No. Okay. The thing I just learned on the internet is that vaginal penetration is the least represented of all the penetrations.
Really?
In Moche sex culture. And this is like a research article. What year is it? 2004.
Somebody had to collect that data?
Yeah. Okay. This article asked the question, what is a reproductive act? Ceramics produced by the South American Moche depict a wide variety of sex acts, but rarely feature vaginal penetration.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's supposed to be.
So that means this one I'm looking at is not... all right. Thought that was...
it's pictured, but it's not...
We have one at DMNS. It is the one where the dude... I'm going to go see it tomorrow and post it on the Instagram.
Imagine this SAA talk, though. He's like, okay, we have our collected data here. You can look at this graph. We have on anal sex, N equals 34.
Oh, it's not a panther. It's a skeleton. My bad.
N equals 55.
Is that any better?
Yeah, back to the necrophilia. More than 1,200 years old, this Moche sex pot depicts a female skeleton masturbating a shawl-wearing male skeleton who embraces and kisses her in return.
Wow.
There's a lot going on with this pot.
And if you can look here at this next slide, the standard deviation of vaginal sex is 4.
They don't have any graphs, which I'm really sad about in this article.
I know. I'm trying to imagine it in my head, like what this would look like, but...
This is seriously like when we talk about that joke in archaeology, like if we don't understand what it is, it's ritual. The premise of this article is basically like, this has to be ritual.
The funny thing about this, guys, which is why these numbers are in my head, you can just usually on Google Images, you'll scroll down a bit and then it starts giving you like stuff like, dogs or something like that or like ads.
Oh, we're still getting dogs here.
Yeah. So if you scroll down on Moche Sex Ceramics or Moche Ceramics and Moche Sex Pots, it does not end. There is no end to the Google rabbit hole. There are a lot of them.
And a lot of like complete vessels too.
Yeah. Like really well preserved.
So does that mean they're probably elite then?
I don't know.
I don't imagine these being utilitarian goods.
Wait, along that thought,
you could call them utilitarian goods because you want people to reproduce of lower class and you have more people to enslave and or work. You tell them to get it on.
That's one.
It's the opposite of China's policy.
Did you watch David said,
on Netflix? Like vaginal penetration is the least represented.
Well, Connor said that, and I was about to ask: did the article say anything about like why they theorized that?
Give me a sec.
I mean, I guess the logical explanation would be like because they're not doing it for conception. This is weird.
I'm not convinced by my boss's effort to tell me that these are not porn. I mean, he says, at worst, we make sophomoric assumptions demonstrating residual Victorian prudishness.
Well, I mean, they're not really porn because, like, they clearly have a function as being a pot, Or like a lot of them could be like kettles. Well, you don't really pour water out of those or wine or whatever they're drinking out of.
But they have a function.
Yeah,
I mean,
they do have a function. These have a dual
fundamentally.
Function. Yeah.
Could you imagine an ad commercial?
Oh my God.
For what it is.
AdamandEve.com. Look at Moche Sex Pottery. I only know of that because a YouTuber is sponsored by AdamandEve.com, and I was
There's a lot of podcasts that are sponsored. I don't think we can get away with it.
One option we could do. Well, this episode is probably going to get it for us.
Oh, I think so. But I mean, what will our viewers say if we start?
Yeah, like what probably.
Okay. So the sex pots could teach about procreation, sexual pleasure, cultural and social norms, a sort of immortality and transfer of life and souls, transformation and the relationship between the two cyclical views of nature and life. So that's what's going on here.
Okay.
They're doing like 6th grade education via pots.
Well, look at that. The Moche Sex Pottery of, when was this date? 100 to 800 CE was far better than the sexual education I got in Franklin, Tennessee in 2007. So,
what did they teach you guys down there?
My biology teacher, sophomore year of high school, was like, okay, today we have to talk about the E word. And like somebody was like, no, we can't. And I was just like, what is the E word? And then he talked about his evolution and he like had to explain. He's like, I have to teach this. I don't like it. I don't believe it myself, but I have to teach this. And I was like, good God.
Your biology teacher didn't believe in evolution.
He did not. Coach Ladd. He taught the women's basketball team. He was coach of that.
Did you guys have family life education down there?
No, we had youth group. That's like what everyone had.
Exact opposite of.
Yeah.
Connor, did you have FLE out here in Colorado?
I had something that was sex education in 5th grade, I believe.
My sex education in New York in 6th grade, I think 5th grade, was like way more in depth than anything I learned in high school in Tennessee. It's bad.
Yeah, they started us off in 4th grade in Virginia.
I remember I got Old Spice deodorant and I was like, oh, hell yeah. Like they gave me like a little package.
It was all coupled in with that stuff because people started getting stinky.
Yeah.
I used a lot of Axe.
Yeah, I was an Axe kid for sure.
Yeah. My mother.
Oh, you gross people.
God bless. Well, I mean, when you're in like 7th grade and you have the spray thing and you're like, what do I want to smell like today? It's like, Sex Panther. And you just bathe in the fumes.
Yeah. Sometimes I didn't like the smell of like my clothes because I have hyper smell or whatever. I was like, this smells too much like Tide. So I just doused it in Axe and I thought that was better. And I went to school and I had no sex life in high school probably for that reason.
Like most middle school kids, you could smell the like boys from a mile away and it was just clouds of different Axe perfumes.
Yeah. Well, you can smell girls too. Like they had like perfume that they put on like a lot too.
Mm-hmm.
I know that because like I could smell it down the hall and I was like, well, not going that way.
I feel like theirs was more expensive though. Like we could spend like $5 on like an Axe can. And they'd be like, I want to buy $40 of Ralph Lauren.
I still have one can of Axe. I have not used it. I've just brought it with me as a reminder. I moved on to Sauvage by Dior, but in others.
Sauvage.
God damn it. We have the same.
Do we really?
Guys, you got to use Ale Fraiche. I think that's what I use.
Cream Fraiche?
Cream Fraiche. I also had, not
I have
Ralph
Obsession by, who else is that one by? I don't know. I have ones for different events. I always try to mix it up.
Yeah, for different like things that I'm doing. Before we go back to, the actual topic here, did you guys ever figure out when you smash an axe can at the top that makes like a smoke grenade?
Yeah.
An axe grenade. So we would take people's backpacks, unfold them, take everything out, put it back in it, reverse them, and then zip it up and then zip tie it. So you were just like screwed. You couldn't use your backpack. We called it ninjaing a backpack. But then sometimes we like took it to the extreme. And if they had axe in their backpack, which they rightfully deserved this, then you took the axe can, smashed it in the ground so it just constantly sprayed, and then you locked that in their backpack. And then it was just like this thing going like their backpack was just like had axe. Oh, dude, it was hysterical in the day. Reading it back now, and by the look on your faces, it's atrocious.
You're a terrorist.
We had a good time.
But when you say we, I imagine, based on the last conversation we had, you had your little posse. So I imagine you weren't doing any of the dirty work. You had like Ben.
You had like a Hodor.
Yeah,
you had a Hodor that you would just like would smash the things and then.
Oh, I did have a Hodor, dude. But he was like, an intelligent guy. He just was large. Here's the thing, though.
Hodor was intelligent. It was Bran who scrambled that man's brains.
Bran's on notice, dude. What was the... Oh, right. Yeah, so like I thought in high school, like we were just like the weird kids. Like we didn't... Like I wasn't sure where I said, because we weren't jocks. We weren't like nerds, I guess. I don't know. And then like I look back at it and I'm like, we were like the cool kids, which is like neat. Because, like, I don't know, just like we did our own thing. We were in bands. We played sports. We did, I did like my evolution stuff. And I was like, meow. And then, I don't know. It's just weird when you think back in high school, like, where did I fit in? Anyway, guys, just help me out here. We are very far away, and I'm just anxiously talking.
So to divert this, there's a lot of sexual things that happen in Moche culture. The Lord of Saipan, right?
Yeah.
Is also one of the coolest burials that I've seen as part of any sort of culture. Like this dude was pimped out with a bunch of crazy things.
Yeah. And he had two women buried alongside him.
Yeah. I think they were considered slaves or like...
They probably weren't willing.
Yeah, it's probably
to Ancient Origins, or the first link I click right is freaking Ancient Origins, which everyone stay away from, and then Archaeology World. Jesus.
So six other people, 3 young women, 2 males, and a child of about 9 or 10.
A lot of gold.
A dog, apparently, as part of that. So,
when was this burial? 300.
Saipan, not Saipan.
Saipan. Sorry,
Saipan.
Yeah.
Uncovered in 1987. Huge complex. Unplundered multicultural tombs with unearthed at the Huaco Rajada archaeological site near Saipan of the north coast of Peru.
Yo, this guy is stacked. That is cool. There's gold in there?
A lot of gold. A lot of pots around. None of them look like sex pots.
Wow. Nope. No sex pots.
Dude, no Ancient Origins. I'm not getting updates from you.
One of us.
So for the audience listening, that is El Señor de Saipan. That's Sipan. It's pretty cool. I've never heard of that. That's awesome.
Safe for work.
It is. Yeah, it is safe.
Very safe for work.
I mean, it's human remains, but like Wei Zhongjin. So we're talking about complex civilizations. We have 2 minutes left. After all this derailment about sex pots and then Adam and Eve and then my high school antics, what did we learn today, guys?
Nothing at all.
I learned a few things.
Yeah, ancient civilization comes in many forms, and a lot of it does, as we've seen through all these monumental architectures, part of it. And that South America had complex civilization almost as long as Mesopotamia. Sex pots aren't pornography, according to my boss. And that we're just applying our Victorian prudishness.
Also, all sieves ebb and flow. but they also are derivative.
Can you imagine, like, a lot of these last like 1,000 years? Like, these things are persistent in time, and we've managed to like go into collapse within 300 years. We're doing great.
Well, I mean, like, we've been built upon stuff since, I'd say, since Rome.
I feel like the Maya also collapsed in that same sort of period. They were flourishing for like a couple.
They had 100 years, or no, they had 1,000 years. No, they had 1,500, dude. It's like 500 to 1,000, but they still existed. But I'm just saying, like, we ran like 1992. The world was our oyster, and
why 1992?
The Cold War ended.
Wasn't it 1989? Like when the wall fell?
That's when the wall fell, but I don't think the Soviet Union like collapsed until the early 90s, like 91, and then like 30 years we.
1991. You're right. Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I thought it was 90 or 89.
29 years we managed to screw that up.
And then 9/11, and here we are.
On that great note, this has been episode 69 of A Life in Ruins podcast.
It will be better next week, guys. It'll be better.
We'll probably get derailed. David wants you to review this podcast.
Yeah, please be sure to rate and review the podcast and provide us with feedback on whichever podcasting platform you're using and listen to our show on. That would be great, guys.
And buy our shirts, buy our stuff.
Yeah, like, we got a logo, we got stuff.
No one has answered our challenge to check out our OnlyFans. It's on our link tree, not LinkedIn. It's on our link tree.
Kelly Brown, shout out.
She said she got a bunch of profile views. And then I found her LinkedIn and I said, this is a DM slide. Yeah, but LinkedIn, guys, it's a thing. And I've not ever had success with it, so I don't recommend it.
Yeah,
it's just
don't defend
emails.
Kelly Brown here.
I don't even have an academia account.
Oh, that's good, though, because it will email you every time someone searches for you on Google. And it is awful.
Sweet.
Yeah.
You poor thing being so popular. All right, so this has been episode 69. Thank you for joining us on this journey. And with that,
I think it's me looking up my website.
are out. Thanks for listening to A Life in Ruins podcast.
You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at A Life in Ruins Podcast, and you can also email us at alifeinruinspodcast@gmail.com.
And remember, make sure to bring your archaeologists in from the cold and feed them beer. I don't trust the owls at Machu Picchu. I reckon they're all in cahoots.
My Lord. That is good.
That's not even relevant to Machu Picchu. You can take any place and apply that stupid owl joke.
It's Inca hoots.
Yeah, in cahoots.
Oh. I thought
Where else
hoots
you gonna
was the...
play?
Yeah, no, you're right. The first time I just heard in
I just heard the
cahoots.
hoots. Yeah, I just heard the hoots part. Okay, thank you, Connor. That was... God damn it.
This episode was produced by Chris Webster from his RV Traveling America, Tristan Boyle in Scotland, and the Archaeology Podcast Network, and was edited by Chris Webster.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.archpodnet.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.